says, so he connects that right after the Akedah, that she passes away. So what's going on? The Akedah is happening right up here in Yerushalayim, and then Avram goes down here, and what's Sarah doing in Hebron? What's going on? What's going on? And that's one question of geography and just the timeline of what's going on. And then there's a whole bunch of other questions that could be asked in the Rashi. First of all, another general question. When we say Loma Nismacha, one parsha to another parsha, so sometimes like by the Meraglim or Mrs. Miriam, where things are not where they're supposed to be, one parsha and the second parsha, they don't like flow. So the question is why? Loma Nismacha, this parsha to that parsha, it doesn't flow. It's not chronological, and it's not the way in the order of what had happened. We say there's a special reason why the Eibishter put the first and the second parsha next to each other to teach you that there's some dimyan, that the Meraglim should have seen the story of Miriam and learned Musar, learned a lesson from that. But here it's like, what's the Torah supposed to do if there is an Akedah? And after that, sort of passed away. And after that, Avram Avinu purchases Marosov. What's the question? Loma Nismacha. Why did the Torah put one story after the other story? That's the way it happened. There was Akedah, and according to the Medrash, and Rashi accepts it, that from the Besudas Akedah, sort of passes away. And then Avram Avinu purchases the Marosov from the Bnei Ches. So what do you mean, Loma Nismacha? How should it not be Nismacha? That's the way it happened. So obviously it'll be Nismacha. One Pasha goes after the other Pasha. And then there's a whole bunch of other Kedarka from the Rebbe, when you nitpick, it's enough, you start finding the answers too. So Rashi, when Rashi wants to say that the Parsha Akedah and the Parsha of Sorah is next to each other, why doesn't he say it right in the beginning, in the first pasuk, Chayei Sorah? Why does he wait for the second pasuk to say that? And within the second pasuk, why does he say, wait for the latter part of the second pasuk to tell me, Loma Nismacha, this first parsha and the second parsha? Also, the Ramban, as I mentioned before, asks, what do you mean? Rashi says, Vayava Avram Be'er Sheva. But there is a medrash that says, Vayava Avram Mehara Moriya, not Be'er Sheva. So the truth is, it's not a kasha really about Rashi, because Rashi is going to say, what do you want from me? Medrash is Medrash, but at the end of the Parsha Kedah, it says, so that's fine. But the question is, why does Rashi have to say Avram Be'er Sheva? It's obvious that Avram Be'er Sheva. Is Rashi trying to say, don't listen to the Medrash that says otherwise? But it's a Ben Chomesh L'Mikra. He didn't learn that Medrash. And it's not usually the style of Rashi to try to negate a Medrash. He's just writing a Pshuta Shel Mikra, and because it's an obvious pasuk in last week's Parsha, that Vaykumu v'yelcha yachdav be'eshava v'yeshav Avram be'eshava, v'yeshav Avram be'eshava is what we finished off. So he's in Be'eshava. V'yov Avram means he came from Be'eshava. What is Rashi trying to tell me here? What is Rashi emphasizing? What's the chidush here in Rashi? Okay. Let's stop at the questions and go straight to the answer. We're standing right here at the Moka Menuchas Rambam, and there's obviously by us there's a koch in Limud Rambam, and one of the things in Rambam is Rambam was also a pashto, the idea of pshat. So the Rebbe says that a lot of times that the Bocher Azetzah, the ones that took the Rashi from the manuscript and typed it up, didn't realize that the Rashi sometimes quotes words from the pasuk and sometimes says his own words. Sometimes it wasn't clear to them which are the words that Rashi is saying kilo achidush, his pshat, or which are the words that Rashi is saying that that is just quoting words from the pasuk. It's the Rebbe says that perhaps Vayove Avram mi Be'er Sheva, this first Rashi is not trying to say a chidush. Rashi is just bothered by a question. Vayove Avram, obviously Avram is going to come when he hears his wife passes away. And if he's in Be'er Sheva, obviously he has to come. What's the pasuk saying, Vayove Avram? What's the word Vayove Avram? So the Meforshim will talk about it. Some say Vayove Avram means that Avram had his own tent and she had her own tent. So Vayove Avram came from his tent to her tent. Or it means, it's just a loshen. Vayove, it means that he girdled himself to prepare a hesped or to buy the land for her burial place. It doesn't sit well in Pshat. What's the Vayove Avram? Obviously Avram has to come. So Rashi says, Vayove, the Torah wants to tell you, Vayove Avram, mi be'er shava, what we said before, because the emes is that we could say that without Vayove Avram, the pasuk could go well without Vayove Avram. Why did we say Vayove Avram? The Torah wants to emphasize Vayove Avram Be'esheva to tell you that Avram, to tell you that Avram is coming from Be'esheva, which was the end of the story of the Akedah. And now the Torah wants to emphasize that nismacha misasora lakedas yitzchak. In other words, if the Torah didn't say Vayove Avram, that's fine. So there's a story that happened of the Akedah, then there's another story that happened after the Akedah, and then there's the story of the misasora. But now the Torah says Vayove Avram, which is if the Torah says Vayove Avram Be'esheva. Why does the Torah have to say it? To tell you that you should realize that the Torah wants to emphasize that Misa, Sor, and Akedas Yitzchak are connected. Therefore, the Torah puts in the extra two words of Vayove Avraham, to tell you, Vayove Avraham Be'esheva, to tell you that Nismach Misa, Sor, Akedas Yitzchak. The truth is that not only that chronologically, after the Akedah, there is the story of Misa, Sor, so therefore you can't ask Loma Nismacha, but the truth is it isn't Nismacha. It isn't Nismacha, because after the Parsha of Akedah, there's 8 psukim, which is a total different story. After the Akedah, there's another story. The story of Sarah's passing doesn't happen right after the Akedah. There's 8 psukim in the Torah. It says, Vayugad Lavram Leimer, Hine Yolda Milka Gamhi Bonim Lanoch Rachicha. And it's interesting, Agav Urcha, parenthetically, Rashi says, Bisrei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shanoel Derivka. Why does Rashi have to say Bisrei HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Maybe a messenger came and told it to him, but it doesn't make sense to say, because he was walking after the Akedah. At that time, a short time later, is the passing of Sarah. Now, and at that time, in that short time, he's supposed to find out that Rivka was born. But that for messenger to come from the place of the birth of Rivka to tell it to Avram was a very far trip, and we don't find that the Torah should emphasize that there was some miracle of Kvitzas Haderach similar to that happened to Eliezer. Therefore, Rashi says, Bisrei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shanoel Rivka. There was Huri Dvarim, that Avram had thoughts in his mind saying, it's a shame that I didn't marry off my son. I didn't find him a shidduch yet. And Bisrei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at that point, the Eibusha told him, Shanoel the Rivka, so therefore he should know that the Ben Zugay of Yitzchak was born. But anyway, being as it may, the story of the Akedah and the story of Misa Sora are not one right after the other. There is a story in between. So it's not really Smichas HaParshas. So Rashi says, that's why Rashi says, Vayov Avram is 2 extra words. Why do we have to say Vayov Avram? Meveistach. That Vayeshev Avram, Beveshava. We know he's in Veshava. And that's what the Torah is saying, extra 2 words, Vayov Avram Beveshava, to tell you, to emphasize that Nismach Misasar Lakedas Yitzchak. That through that you know that Misasar and Akedas Yitzchak are connected. By the way, the timeline the timeline in Rashi says in Parshas Vayera that when Avram was 75 years old when he comes to Eretz Yisrael, 25 years he lives in Hebron, and then 26 years he lives in Be'er Sheva. Then he moves back to Hebron, and Rashi says that he's there for 12 years. Yitzchak is born when Avram is 100. Yitzchak gets married at the age of 40. So Be'etzem, and then Rashi says that 12 years that they were back in Hebron 12 years before Akedas Yitzchak. So again, the timeline is 25 years in Hebron, 26 years in Be'er Sheva, and then another 12 years in Hebron before Akedas Yitzchak. And then after Akedas Yitzchak, about 3 years later, is around about, and Yitzchak is now 40 years old, is the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka. So what's remaining to understand is, so what, if they're living now in Hebron, why is Yitzchak going back to Be'er-Sheva? That's why Rashi says, and last week at the end of the story of the Akedah, Lo Yeshiva Mamash, that over here, Vayeshev Avram doesn't mean like usually Vayeshev means Yeshiva Mamash, that means that he settled and he lived there. By Avram Avinu coming back from the Akedah is Lo Yeshiva Mamash. It was just an Akova Ba'alma. Why did he go back to Be'er-Sheva? So Rashi doesn't go into that. He leaves it up to us. One of the, you can look in the Mefarshim, based on a little bit of what the Mefarshim say, and the Rambam, Avram had planned, Vayital Eisha Be'er-Sheva V'yikra Sham B'Shem Hashem, that he called out to the people in the world in Hashem's name. So there's no reason to think that when he moved from Be'er-Sheva and went back to Hebron that he got rid of the Eshel, especially if you say the Eshel was that he planted a beautiful garden that gives fruit. So what did he do? He went and he chopped down the trees. So could be that the Eshel stayed. The Eshel stayed. So right after the Akedah, so like mitzvah geredes mitzvah, that he decided to go all the way down from Har HaMoriah to Be'er-Sheva and to check up on his Eshel, where he had perhaps people manning the Eshel in order to be koyde b'shem Hashem. And when he was in Be'er-Sheva, at that short time, like Rashi says, Lo Yeshiva Mamash, at that short time, he found out that Sarah passed away. Okay, so just to summarize, so the timeline, according to Rashi, as Rashi says in Vayera, that 75 years old Avram comes to Eretz Yisrael, 25 years in Hebron, 26 years in Be'er-Sheva, 12 years is back to Hebron. Then there's Akedah, 3 years later, Yitzchak gets married. True, after the Akedah, the Avram goes to Be'er-Sheva, but that's not where he lives at that time. He went to check up on the Eshel, and perhaps he went to thank the Eibishter in a special place where he was koyde b'shem Hashem for what happened with him and his son. Be it as it may, now we understand what's the pshat again in Rashi. Vayove Avram Be'er-Sheva. The Rashi is not saying a chidush; he's just saying these extra two. Why is Vayove Avram? Obviously, Vayove Avram. He's in Be'er-Sheva, and he comes to Hebron. It's Vayove. The Torah wants to emphasize Vayove Avram and Be'er-Sheva to tell you that through these two words we know that Nismach Misa Sora Lakedes Yitzchak. It's not because the parsha of Sora comes after the Akedah. First of all, who says that that's a proof for anything? And second of all, it doesn't really come afterwards. There is a psukim in between. The Nismach is because it says Vayove Avram, which is an extra two words, which means Be'er-Sheva. So why is the pasuk trying to tell me? Nismach misas Sora lakedes Yitzchak. Remaining one question here is why Rashi, and the question that we didn't speak about before. But there's one question that's a little troubling still, L'chayda and Rashi. Rashi says, "Lefisha de psuras akedan shenizdama b'noa l'shchito kemat shaloi nishchat, porcha nishmasa mimeno meisa." The Torah says, "V'tama Sora." Rashi adds two words. Porcha nishmasa. What does it mean, porcha nishmasa? What kind of funny language it says? Porcha Nishmasa. What's it? Pshat. Porcha Nishmasa. So the Rebbe says like this: the Rebbe Chomish Lemikra knows that Noach sent the Oidev, for example. So the Oidev was Peireach. Vayetze Yotze Vashoiv. It went here, it went back. It was Peireach. It flew here and it flew back. A child might ask a question. Children sometimes ask very direct questions. A child will ask a question. Sora found out that her son, Kema Chaloi Nishchat. There are Rahman al-Islam people that lose children. And even in Chumash, we know stories of parents who lost children. Terach lost a son in his lifetime. And we don't find that Merov Tsar V'Yogan, that from great pain and anguish, that to that extent, it should be that they should die. Especially here that it's not that she didn't know the entire truth. Rashi says, again, others might say differently, but Rashi says that she heard a besura shenizdama v'lo l'shchita ukemat shaloi nishchat. So why should be parcha nishmasa memenu? So that Rebbe Moededik a word that Rashi is trying to say like this, that there was a person hears very sad news or very happy news. A person could contain it, but adova v'puchay, something which is opposite, is something that the person can't contain. If it's very sad, very happy news, but if they come together, that she hears shenizdama b'no l'shchita ukemat shaloi nishchat, two opposite things, it was too much for her. Porcha nishmasa, her neshama went flying from the right to the left to the right, and that's what made that mesa. Today, doctors figured out, we're standing now in the Mokum Rambam, so the doctors figured out that there's sometimes in a very extreme case, they give a person a shock treatment. And we know from the Gemara that the Gemara says that less immediately, and we know that even the Gemara says that Shiur ben Chananya had a debate in Gemara B'Choros, Daf Ches, that he had a debate with Sabi Devei Atuna, and he proved everything, and they were wrong, and he proved everything from the Torah. So we see we can find everything in the Torah. So the idea of today in medicine, that they came up with the idea of a shock treatment, we see it by Sora. That Sora was that the Porcha Nishmasa happened because it was a shock treatment. There was two opposite things. She heard Shenizdamam B'lo L'Shchito Kamat Shaloi Nishchat, and therefore Porcha Nishmasa. That's what Rashi is adding to explain why was it that the news made that should be in Mesa. Okay, now let's talk about, we spoke about the Pshat, and now we have to talk a little deeper than Pshat. The Rambam, we're standing at the Malkum Kfuras Rambam, and the Rambam, and this week those that are learning 3 Parakim Rambam finish Sefer Avodah and starting Sefer Korbanos on Sunday. The Rambam writes, "Royo Adam Lizboinem beMishpatei HaTorah HaKadoshah, v'lei the Sefer Yonim Kefi Choichoi, v'dover Shelo Yimtzalei Tam v'lo Yeda Le'ile Al Yekal Be'einav." That Torah says that a person should be Mizboinem beMishpatei HaTorah and try to understand the spiritual content as much as he could. And if he doesn't know, Al Yekal Be'einav. But he should know that every mitzvah has an unbelievable depth to it. For example, the last pasuk, which interrupts the story of the Akedah and the story of Chayei Sarah, Upilaksho Shemaru Umma. So there's unbelievable deep things in Chassidus, and talking about why we read it on Dafka in the beginning of the year in Rosh Hashanah, and why it's so important. But a person that doesn't know the deep Pshat of Chassidus is still Al Yekal Be'einav. And the Rambam writes, if there's piece of wood and rock and sand, that because a person verbalized that these are kedusha, they become so holy. So, Kolchken, the mitzvahs, that there's an oimek, lifnim an oimek to every mitzvahs, and we can't imagine how deep it is. So also when it comes to the purchase of Meyoras HaMachpelah, and also when it comes to the story of Sora, with the shock treatment that she passes away. Obviously, that there is the negative way of looking at it, but obviously there is the way that that Pnimis HaTorah looks at it. That sometimes there's arevis, neimus, mesikus, that there's such a sweetness that a person feels, that there's kolsa nafshi, that a person has kaloisa nefesh sometimes, and a person feels certain sweetness for lakus that he sees that the body can't contain it, so the neshama goes flying, and the same thing over here by Sarah Imenu, that she felt the unbelievable power and understood the unbelievable sweetness and the power of the Akedah, that she couldn't contain it, and her neshama went up. Obviously, we know that Chassidus emphasizes the importance of neshama being dafk in this world, and that's merumas in the world of Chevron. That the Zohar says is Kiryas Arba. Arba means that there's the four basic yisoides that a person is made of: Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ve'ofor. And even though later the scientists today know all kinds of things, but we see that the Rambam himself, who knew that the scientists broke down other elements to different categories, but still brings that basic four elements that the Torah says Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ve'ofor. And the Zohar says that the idea is that the Yid has to be mechuber, has to be chevren. That not that chas v'sholom, that the tachlis of the life of a Yid is that you should Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ve'ofer should be mechuber together. And when a Eibishter wants, the neshama should come back. The Eibishter wants, the neshama should come back. But till then, our whole thing in life is to see the beauty of what we can do as a neshama beguf chevren. That b'shas it's b'schabris, and perhaps we could say that there's also the idea of chevron, which is when we're mechuber, one yid and another yid, that the power when we're mechuber together is an unbelievable power. I want to finish off with just a word. I was talking earlier, we were talking before about the shul, so about the Beis Menachem Mendel, Eib shall helfen, that we should be matzliach, and that this should be a mikdash mat. It will be the last mikdash mat. It will be mechuber with the big Beis HaMikdash. We see that Avraham Avinu paid kesef molei. He paid full price. Why did Avraham Avinu pay kesef molei? Rashi says that Rashi when he talks about it, Rashi says he brings a posuk that happened by David HaMelech. Rashi says, "B'chesef molei shalom kol shaveh v'chein David Amar la'aravno b'chesef molei." That David HaMelech said, "I'll give kesef molei." What's the pshat kesef molei? So the Rebbe says that the pasuk says, "Ki lo eseh asher l'chol Hashem v'hala oilos chinam." David the Melech said to Aravna, even though I conquered the city, I was with my children in Yerushalayim, and there's what they call the city of David, and they show the whole brilliance of how David the Melech conquered the city of the Yevusim. So David the Melech said, I could take it, but I don't want you to have anything to say that you have. I want to take away your schusim completely. You shouldn't say you have some connection to this whole thing. When it comes to building the Beis HaMikdash, it's an unbelievable schus, and those people that are involved have to have a schus to be able to be involved in it. Ravna was a goy, a Yevusi noch. David the Melech said, I don't want him to have even the smallest thing that he has a little bit of chelik. The same thing, that's what Rashi says, the same thing, that Avraham Avinu didn't want that Ephron Achiti should, or the goyim should later say, we have some type of, even though the Eibishter gave it to him, he said, I want to pay Bekesef Molek. But Api Kabbalah, Api Zohar, the Zohar connects it with the Inyan Asher Noichel B'Mitzrayim Chinam. The Zohar says that the Kedusha has to be Lashta Dola the Koyeus Kefum Chelab. The Dafka the Avoida of Yigiyah is what makes a person have a Rucha the Kedusha. Mashenke Mitzrayim is Chinam, Chinam and Mitzvahs, things that are free. Free is in Klippa. But in Kedusha, a person puts in the Yigiyah, and that's how he's Kaveya in him, Kedusha. Dafka things that come be Yigiyah. David shall helfen through our Yigiyah B'Torah and our Yigiyah Mitzvah Shem to establish a beautiful Mikdash Mat. that mitzvah Shem we should have bonim or bnei bonim oiskim b'toyre b'mitzvahs, and that this should be the last bigdash miyat that we're going to build on chutz loretz that will come flying and be nikva connected to the base of mikdash hashlishi Yerushalayim kodesh bevias Mashiach tzedkenu. And as we mentioned at the beginning of our Shiur, that here the Rambam said that the Kabbalah is that the Sanhedrin will be reestablished here in Tveria, and from Tveria, Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to travel to Yerushalayim HaKodesh, to the base of Mikdash HaShlishi Sheibana B'Meir V'Yameinu. Thank you for joining. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. True, but I'm in Eretz HaKodesh, and who knows, maybe Mashiach Tzedkenu will come, and you guys will all come here, and I'll stay here.
We got a rerun now here. Rerun.
Rambam, and it's in Chayei. There's so many stories that are told in Sforim about the Kfur of the Rambam. The Rambam said he should be put on a gomel, and they should let the gomel walk. And it's brought in several Sforim, different variations of the story, that there is Orchas Mishmaelim that thought that this was a big treasure, and they tried to take it, and they couldn't move it, and then they realized it was the body of a holy person, and they asked the Yidden to come, and they went with them, and the Gomel walked up all the way to Tveria. It's strange that the Rambam would want to be buried in Tveria, which is almost the most northern point in Eretz Yisrael, so far away from Mitzrayim. Many reasons has been said. I mean, the Rambam is buried right here next to his father. Rabbeinu Maimon could be. Rabbeinu Maimon was buried there earlier. Recently, someone that lives in this neighborhood, an Arab neighbor, had showed him a rock that he found in his basement, that it said there, Kever Shel Reb David, which is the grandson of the Rambam, which is also something quite interesting. But we spoke about this some time ago, that the Rambam writes that there were 10 goluyos that the Bezdin went, going from Yerushalayim and basically most around the Golil, Usham, Shafram, Beishorim, Tzipoidi, and the last place was Tveria. And there's a Kabbalah from that place, from Tveria, that the Bezdin, the Sanhedrin,